There's 3 entity force screens that we go through. The process of the dream, okay, the interpretations of what a dreamer is, of who we are, and what you're dreaming and why you're dreaming is how you're dreaming. All that communication comes in all line setting. It's all lines in the mind, inception, inside track, location to its system. The identify yourself in the lines of communication. Process how you see things, everything around you. Okay, so we're going to get into deeper core because your I division lines and Freudian sequence is going to go through. Third line is a travel, direct lines of grounds, and lines of 12 cycles into one set position line, the highest center location to its system with the DNA track center location, I receptors. It changes the spectacle set with relation setting and track communicates to its surface and travel. So the directing signal location is its dream. Now everybody understands what a dream is, right? But we don't understand what a dream is until we understand the dreamer of us. We are the dreamer of looking through dreams, and understanding that is through dreaming. Now it's the correlations of 3 lines of cycles of 3-1 set position lines of travel. You're seeing lines of the I division, center core lines of height calculations of provisions. Right over left, left over right. But your provision line cycle has to understand the triangulation box. Triangulation box. It's all it is. Open, open. Triangulation, open, open, right? But it's got to come in its 12-line DNA structure. So it's got to morph in its setting line, communication setting to reach those 144,000 frequencies and travel. Starts off with 144 grounds, set position 144,000, and position 144 million, and 144 billion, 144 trillion. Setting lines of configuration setting in all lines of temperature readings and track relation to a system. The eye itself is magnetic force, okay? The eye line screen adaptation to its system is all levels. It's connected to an iron line. Its track coordinate is triangulation, a laser line communication setting, a plasma screen, directing lines of communication setting to its plasma using wall line circuit. It's a screen adaptation to its flux that allocates time frame location setting and its position locations, how you see yourself through remote, recharge, and all position to its cycle. Now, we all have to identify that through that, through all levels. So the one thing we get confused of is interpretation, how we see dreams, of the dreamer that we are, and the provisions of dreaming all at once. And that's where we're getting in position lines and high attractions. Understand the conscious awareness of everything, guys. It's truly understand that. It's giving you instructions how to basically, we go into the basic grounds, how to sit in a chair. That chair is showing you how to get into structure, how to get in that position, how to actually sit here, sit there, sit, do this, do that, go here, go there. So it's all provision of its own consciousness, giving you self-awareness, self-consciousness, location conscious of its awareness, how to use that through the subconscious location too. Process how you see things, location your systems. But there's no conscious of anything. There's no subconscious of anything until you get in your own position, location, what you are through what you're seeing through a dream, of the dreamers that you are and the dreaming. This is a 3 conceptual setting, and this is connected all obviously Orion's belt. Orion's belt is the past, present, future. Now, how you use the Orion's belt is a constellation path. It's a pathogen, it's a collagen, it's a line screen adaptation of stargates. It puts lines, all communication, star portals, star mapping sequence, star panels. In that line, the rotation lines of surface, track correlation, sending, travel, communicate to its system. But the highest levels that you can come into, okay, is your imaginations, where you are in your realities, is how to identify that, okay, and how to see dreams and what they are through interpretations. Understand it through a mind of conception of the mind inside itself. Okay, is the imaginary setting, which is the imaginary child that we all are. That process our communication, how we see things in real time, existing and evolving and everything happening all at once. This provision just cycles lines of communication in your clockings, but once you understand how to get into the dreams, then you understand how to do it through the dreamer that you are interactions of. Now, if everything is existing, everything is evolving, and everything's in all timelines all at once, that means everything's in travel all at once. We're traveling all at once. But you've got to understand yourself as a dreamer. You are the dreamer. You are the navigation of the dream that puts everything in a process of real reality in real time. And how you see that is through dreaming. So you're in that position of interpretation of the dream to the dreamer that you are and what you're dreaming. That's existing and evolving and expanding. Okay? The dream itself is the nothing. The dreamer itself is all formations of nothing. The dreaming is all always just existing and evolving and expanding all at once, living all timelines all at once, interactions, all right? So when you get your I position lines of high centers, 3-track provision lines of cycles comes in line communication of spectrum. How to see that in line, of course, center location in your system. We live inside the I lines, guys. Now the provision lines has a dark line view. Starting at the basic grounds and triple force, setting lines of quadruple, line course centers, lines of 4 centers, lines of screen adaptation over 7/12. Sets lines of clocking and a 24 line ground and set lines of sequence, lines of panel to its operation system. Coordinates and location by digital pad. All right. So conscious being aware. For example, for lines of communications. See, the thing is, guys, you're not modifying everything around you until you modify yourself to your own dreamer that you are in the lines of conception, how you see yourself through imaginations in real time. You can't come into imaginations until you understand what you are interpreting through the dream itself, which is all of you dreaming. So you are the dream to the dreamer to the dreaming that's existing and evolving all at once. So the body has to come into its what? Of what it really is. Its dreamer itself, which is always living the cycles of imaginations. Understanding lines of view. If you're sitting on a bed, now once you sit on that bed, you have no more control of that body in that position. The actual bed itself takes over the body through navigation. All right? Very powerful stuff. Same as soon as you sit in a chair. Okay, the chair is now controlling the body through navigations. And we're not consciously aware of that. Anything you touch, okay, you're traveling through it. Are you traveling through yourself, through the dreamer that you are, or are you trying to understand the interpretation of what you're seeing through a dream? But you don't realize you're all lines of all communication dreaming all at once. That's right. You're all dreaming all at once. Now that provision lines aside, that we're all timelines all at once, guys. Okay, but there's one thing you can't get out of. Is real time of everything, existing and evolving, expanding. You're already in provision. Now you just have to understand how to use it through the mind interpretation to its eye. I would say you've got 12 cycles, 3 lines of centers, 3 travels. Now the inside line of the box frame, okay, is coming provision of outside line in communication. It's coming outside now. Security defense lines and screen adaptation, okay. Process lines, data files, 3 lines of signals. Data formation lines at ground at 45 setting. So it's coming in its own inventory. It's coming in its own traffic. It's coming in its own system, coming in its own activation, screen adaptation, its flux. All right. It's coming out now, guys. So set position lines of high lines of travel. Sonar echo, screen adaptations of flux over screen. Okay. It's all coming out. So it's expanding. Okay. So understanding the set lines of high position locations, what you guys have problems with is that when you get into positions when you're on the bed, you're no longer in control. The bed itself is controlling the body through navigations. So it's basically understanding if you're lying in your stomach, okay, the bed itself is reminding you, the body itself, that everything in set position location is slowing down. You're lying on your back, you're speeding up. If you're turning over to the left, you have to understand your coordinates. Your body itself is north, east, west, and south. But once you sit anywhere, or when you stand anywhere, or wherever you are, anything you touch is now navigating the body. So you have to truly understand to see that through the system that you are the dreamer of your animation, which is all position, location, or systems, process you to your avatars. Now, I like to say with the basic rounds with the avatar, because the avatar is basically the floater. It's the levitation. It's the teleportation. It's the vessel. It's the pod. It's the ship. So once we understand that, then we can understand the body itself, okay, is moving itself, which means the bed is moving the body when it's sleeping, okay? So you're not doing this. The bed's doing it. It's giving you instructions how to go this way, how to go that way, be on your stomach, be on your back, be on your sides, flicker in this, flicker in that, neck goes here, this and that way, and this way. It's all through travel. It's all through travel, okay? So when you sit in a chair, you're now in navigation of the chair itself. Everything around you has its own pod. Everything around you has its own teleportation vessel. You pick up this cup, you're traveling through it. Are you consciously aware that it's in a dream? Are you consciously aware that you're a dreamer and dreaming at the same time? The one thing you guys have to identify is your vision, okay, is what's going on with the dream. And you're in seconds, minutes, and hours, right? So the one thing I want to get you guys a true understanding, we're going to get more on a deeper core to understand how it comes into the dream, to the dreamer, to the dreaming that you are interactions. Understand location and settings. Because it all centralized the communication constellation in one center. One position, all position. No position, all position. Line conditions, high lines of high position coding. Everything we come into is volume and mass, how we look at things. We look at things all levels up interdimensional setting and how we see that in provision lines of set positions. Everything is interdimensional. Everything's dimensional. So the body itself is dimensional setting, but it's not here or there. The body's everywhere all at once in seconds, minutes, and hours. The body itself has to breathe. The body itself has to travel. The body itself has to understand its own navigation. The body itself has to understand its own coordinates. When it sits in a chair, knowing the chair itself, it's given the body instructions how to navigate its system. And setting lines of all communicate. You sit in the car, okay? The car is navigating the body. And where are you going to go? It sets up its map and its mind setting. See, the thing is, everything around you has its own consciousness, but everything around you already has its interests. Its lines of all communication setting has all position location, that's all lines of correlation and everything that's done. There's nothing for you to do. The body's just reminding itself of what it already knows. How to dream, the interpretation of the dream, how it comes into the dream, to the dreamer that I am, and processing that through the dreaming. Now we get a better understanding how this all works in provision in real time. Okay, clocking your centers, directing lines of signal location system off the travel. This helps you and guides you to understand how to come into that formation system because you're in that track correlations to its setting. It's the seconds, minutes, and hours that we have to get in provisions of, knowing exactly, seeing that high lines of screen adaptation to a system off the tractions. So directing lines of signals, processing lines of box frames, triangulations of 3 centers of travel. All right. So this is the calculation setting. Okay, this is you looking through the dream. 3 set lines of set lines. Okay, that's you looking at the dream, right? Now, you're the dreamer inside the dream. Okay, that's the dreamer. Okay, realizing that the dreaming is where you are through pi. It's a constant, continuous flow that just keeps going and going and existing through travel, through time. Okay, so you got that now? This is the dream. That's the dreamer inside the dream of itself, and nothing of the game of itself. That modifies the position of dreaming, all lines of all signals. Setting lines of seconds, minutes, and hours in frame. Okay, that's all it is in tractions. Pretty simple, right? So what you're doing, you're in the dream of the dreamer in position of dreaming all at once in flux. That's 3 centers of core communication lines of molecules and set lines of travel. Setting lines of direct signals and location system, all through calculations. Okay, so the provision lines, the I line, sets lines of 12 division lines of cycles. So it's a triangulation box. Start off with this system, start with that setting, start with that locations, right? And then we go outside now. We go outside the provision location, its perimeters and track communications. All right, triangulation, and the box comes out now. Okay, it's expanding now. It's expanding inside and outside of itself now. Okay, so it's very powerful. How to get in that settings. How you come into the dream, to the dreamer, to the interpretation of dreaming all at once. In the triangulation of flux over screen. Okay? You change the angles too, it doesn't matter, but what you have to understand, the interpretation is how you see things through equation. Because it's a constant, continuous flow. Remember I told you about the relation between the triangulation box where they have to get into confirmation lines of balance with themselves and each other? Well, it's all about understanding you gain conscious location awareness because your avatar lives in the dream itself, which is the levels of the dreamer. Okay, so you're looking and on looking at the same time. So you're actually outside the box looking in and inside looking out at the same time. That's circulation going this way, circulation going that way. Fibonacci going one way in set position. That opens up all the portals of communication lines and settings, and your Merkaba test circuit travel into the wormholes and travel communications. Okay, that's all it is in tractions. Now your I line is now in center line, which is the mining and conceptual settings. So pocket circuits, 3 centers of travel. So that's communication lines. The cataracts and 3-line division location system lines of travel. Okay, and then we get into the coordinates location setting in position or compass. Directing ground lines and high lines of sequence. The I division location setting opens all signal locations to its system, right? Sets lines of flaps, set lines of ground lines of flaps. Correlation setting lines of communication lines of travel. The I itself is its ground self and set travel and communications. Looking through the I line centers. Flux over 3, flux over 6, flux over 8, how they see and line screen adaptations of picture frame and travel. Okay? Very complicated stuff. Now, as you're in the dream, you're going through the dreamer at the same time in seconds, minutes, and hours, so an I cycle. The spectrum lines, course centers of the Earth is going through 3 set lines of course centers in a 4-line measure and scale of communication. Directing lines of grounds comes in a flux lines communication setting in travel communications. All right, setting lines of high centers and set track communications. Laser tractions, there it is. Laser communications, I windows and lines set location and solid travel. So it has 4 lines of settings. Process lines, earth line of 1, earth line 2, earth line 6, and earth line 12. Okay, it goes 4 earth line rotations. One center calculation, 2 lines, 3 lines of signal location adaptation of surface. Process high center lines of travels in an indication system all through tractions. Right? Process lines of panels, perimeters, primers, primates. Process indicates lines of grounds, high lines of surface of flux over 3, lines of 6 over 9, 9 lines of 12. Sets calculation lines of pi over screen. All right? Calculates 1 ground lines, high lines of service, 1 to XC1000, 2 lines of XC1000, 3 lines of measure and scale. Process of communication lines of grounds, lines of high settings. So that's what's going on with your eye. Okay? Friday morning. And so it comes from an outer shell to inner shell, inner shell to outer shell. So the dream is going to take over the interpretation to the dreamer. That's going to take over the interpretation of the dreaming all at once. Constellation comes in aerodynamics, lines in online centers to online circuit to online position, all calculations modify. Directing and redirect, triangulation lines of platforms and position lines of balance, bold. Process lines of same correlation setting and travel communications. So that's what everybody's going to see on Friday. They're no longer going to see in a one-line flat surface in a box frame. Setting lines of travels, direct lines of line grounds. 3-line division location of cycles. So the dream to the dreamer to the dreaming is going to be a central line course centers in the eye scepter course system of travel direct signal. Center course center lines of inside and outside through traction. Okay? And then you go through eye division, eye tractions, eye locations. All right? Seen on the multi-levels, guys. Okay? So we have to truly understand how this all works in flux over screen. Directing lines at ground center location setting, how your eye sequence lines this communication system to its cataract. Directing ground lines of signals, process lines of indicates and setting, all through a T receptor, and travel in that communication. How it sees, guys, okay? Through its dream, to its dreamer, to its dreaming. All right, so we have 3 angles, points, lines of graph, center course centers, 3 lines of flux, constellation lines of 1, and position of 2 over 3 over 5. Okay, so we have constellation 1, we got position lines of Earth grounds, which is the operation lines, that's the ego screen. Directing equals lines, course centers, eco lines into collaboration setting, in the all calculate modify, and travels into the ecosystem, and travel point lines of graph. So we got the ego lines of grounds, that's core lines equals lines of higher self. Setting lines the equal setting, puts into the avatar lines of sequence, into that position location, all levels. Setting travels in point lines of graph, and direct set location of sim. That modificates the system, all levels of high correlation setting of just dreaming in sequence. Okay? So, the provision line, high lines of signals, how we see adaptation lines of force of recognitions. But you have to truly understand how this, and this all comes to one. So that's what's going to happen in the eye line centers on Friday. 3 conceptual settings. We have the face line recognition. We start with that track communication of clocking center, clocking directions, triangulation, and position lines of 2 settings. Face recognition, right? All right, so flux on screen is how it comes in tractions. We'll go with that calculation setting. All right, so it sets track line keys as this. The line is a high location to its antenna, inspiration lines of grounds. Okay, indicate to its cycle. All right. Directing ground lines and circulation rotation lines of flux, ground lines, circulation rotation to its cycle. Propellers lines is 4 lines, 6 lines of 8, 8 lines of 12, and set and measure. Scale. Remember, this is all through the eye line inside. It's happening from the eye inside. All right, so we get ground lines of triangulation inside, and then we have a box line outside frame. Okay, that box is framed to its ego line screen adaptation system. The process communicates to its dream, to its interpretation of its dreamer, to its dreaming. Directing ground lines of 4 lines of signals. High wisdom travels of 3 centers. Set position lines of 4 center communicates setting and travel. Directing lines, course centers, line expanding its location system, all through calculations. That's all inside the eye. And then we can do the grounds, right? All inside the eye. And set position, all right? Friday morning, 6 a.m. Okay, I know it's a lot being said in line screen adaptation system, but it opens all track course centers to Earth lines. So it has center course system. Now you guys come into Earth 7, Earth point 7. Okay, that process communication setting, ground lines of setting, surface location setting, ground lines of sequence, that opens all signals. Process indication setting, all through track centers. Earth point 7 comes in the eye division location to its cataract. The line communicates to its browse adapters, right over left, left over right, and traction. Directing grounds, then we get into the blue water surface. That process communication lines of 7. Perimeters of parameters, lines in bodies of water. Process lines, all correlation setting. The I-line center comes into plasma screens, directing inline outline circuits, indirect cord setting, and super consciousness and travel communications. There's the Earth 7. Inside outside tractions comes out through division. All right, and then we center core centers, and we flick the switch. The I-line lines of sequence location setting. Eyelashes start to all lines and floaters and measure and scale. Process lines of indication setting. Process line communication and inference. Setting travels in point lines graph into position location lotus into its flower of recognition. So your eyes are going to turn into flower recognition. So when it comes into the flower recognition timeline, it comes into I-line, grid lines, set lines of screen adaptation to a system, all through iron. Your direct signal location comes into a catapult to catalyst the set location elongated screens. So the correlation setting is a coil, and a coil has a resistor or transistors. Setting communication height travels. Let's get in position line high centers and process communication at all levels into a pencil. Routes the routers, coil, communication setting to all levels and travel. Okay. Now it sets position lines of high core centers in flux over screen, directing lines over line cross location to its setting. Remember, it's all inside the eye itself. Okay. All right. So we have the eyelashes flickering the screen adaptation to outline signals. We have the eyelash outline signal location, outer space, and travel communications, right? So the eye-centric correlation system, it's changing time measured scale in process communications. Setting communication lines of ground lines of centers, and process carry lines of 4 lines of panels and screen adaptation. Process lines of 4 lines of angles, north, east, west, and south. So the eyes are going to go into the receptor and travel in point lines of graph, and the star screen adaptation is flux over setting, inside travel, okay? So we have a direct line link, and then we come into our own dimensional line rotations, process into black holes. The eyes comes in black holes in seconds, minutes, and hours in frame. Okay. Change course centers, lines of time sequence, flux over lines, sun lines of indication setting, over lines of flux, over lines of panel, over lines of sequence. Sun comes in line rotation cycles, high generates the screen adaptation setting, XC1000, which are the floaters. They float in line single case of 12 lines of measure. Scales communication setting and high position lines of grounds, and position of center, operation sequence location system to your earth line rotation center, and travel communicates to its dream that overrides the sequence to its dreamer to its dreaming all at once in sequence, all inside the eye line, all inside position, right? Everything happens to the eyes and windows of the souls, guys. But the dream now is waking it up to the dreamer, to the actual dreaming. Process of communication setting comes in all lines of configuration system to the constellation settings, which is process lines when you come into that set line. So technically it's eye track correlation. You guys refer it as the Milky Way, right? Well, the Milky Way has a line graph. It's a core lines that correlates in a line core centers in combustion screen adaptations. It's a floater screen of plasma set lines of a mapping sequence, constellation. Process lines of indication setting 1, position lines of 2, high centers lines of 3 over 4, 6 lines of 8, and 8 lines of 12, and set tractions. It's a mapping sequence lines of pi. So once we understand that, remember, it's all inside the eye, guys. Everything's done from the eye. So I want to make sure you understand that. So getting into the eyes of the windows of the soul is under triangulation lines of 1 into box frame or into position of box inside frame communications. Know exactly how to go through data files, process outside line, that lines of communication echo, sonar, and set position lines of travel, or set position triangulating outline signals, outline rotation, outlines of surface and travel. Okay? So there's a lot of things you can do from inside and outside through travel. In communication, outline, rotation lines of triangulation, and position outside, position location of box and frame. Okay? So the eye line, the high line signal location to a system is going to go through 4 inhibitors and screen adaptations and settings. Sets lines of 3 highways, 3 centers, 3 travels, 3-point graphs, and 3 center communication system into the dream, to the dreamer, to its dreaming, all at once in sequence. All right. So there's a triangulation here in center. There's a triangulation here. And then you come in your pyramids. Process of the pyramid set location of center operation. This is the ground line service location system and travel. Okay. All right. And then we separate that. Okay. We have to separate that because that equalizes the equilibrium. Okay. In settings. Okay. So the process of communication is a plasma lock that's in set location, right? So it's all like formations. So basically it's just plasma. It's just water. It shades lines of communication setting and travel. All right, and then we add lines of sequence, plasma lines of indication setting, cross lines of angles. Let's get in the system outline core centers in the carbon. Calculate and modify in blue line signals over cross location to its setting. And then we get into red, which is securing lines of panels. The process communicates to sending highlights and walls of travel. And then we get into laser track centers, position locations, all of the orange. We get a 12-line signal location system, all through calculating setting. And again, and remember, in position location setting, it's all in travel communication to your eyes inside your travel. So everything I do through instruction is all from the eye line. Now the process that is understanding how to go through the Merkaba testagram tetrahedron. So processing the ground line signals, and then we opened up the high centers lines of travel. Now that process is communication setting, how we high position lines of high calculation system to its fields. Process lines of indication lines of pi. Clocking centers over lines of communication lines of pi in direct signal. Then we change the ground lines of service in track communications. All right. All right, so we have a center core system. We come into the pyramid ground surface. Okay, that outlines the signal location setting of travel. So the I-line sequence is here in set position is location system. Okay, that's the I-line right there, right? So the I is sequencing out in lines that in set lines. Determination lines of its dream and position location of its dreamer into the center operation of its eye itself in a 12-line cycle that sets communication to its webbing system of light and dark web and travel communications. Okay, it's going to create its own webbing system. So the webbing system comes in lines of 3 track centers, lines of A, B over lines, C lines of K, K lines of calculation lines of C, C lines of D, D lines of X. Sets travels endpoint lines of center over lines, question over mark, directing lines and A lines of track centers, line communicates and high lines of service, sets calculation one router, line course centers, acceleration lines, constellation grounds, sets communication lines of mapping sequence lines through pi. Hooah. And remember, it's all through the I-set calculation system, from above and from below, inside traction, right? So there's a lot of, in provision lines of cycles, we have to come in a mapping sequence of and travel. Okay, very complicated stuff, but this is all lines of high set correlation setting. You look really close, you can see the simulation grounds and set tractions. That's the high wisdom set position. There's the I lines in sequence. Face recognition system all through travel, right here in travel communications. Face recognition, boom, done. All right, now getting that communications and setting, the I-line sequence lines its panels, its process, its I-line signal, keys to its outline signal, sets communicates inside tractions. So it formulates the I itself, becomes a face of itself in travel. Okay, the actual face becomes its full face, full figures in lines of north, east, west, and south. So your clocking system, your dilations of your eyes, change the specters over core lines and back in time, setting lines of sequence lines as panels. Process lines into face recognition 1, 2, 3, 4, set position 1, 2, 3, 4, set position 1, 2, 3, 4, set position 1, 2, 3, 4, and set position 1, 2, 3, 4. How clocking works, right? So we ground the surface inside traction, all through setting, and work with the inside. Okay, Erickson inside lines create the face recognition setting of time. Process lines of 4, 3, 2, and 1 lines of measure and scale. Sets calculation lines of ground lines of surface, set positional keys, constellation system, all through travel. Inside and outline rotation. Okay? Your eye. Okay, 2 browsers, one below, one above, right? The XC1000 here, XC1000 here. You didn't need to see that, right? Look at your eye lines, right? This, XC1000 ground, XC1000 above, right? This here is the lip. Okay? This is the lip, right? This is the pod. This is the upper pod. This is the lower pod. This is the eye central line. This is triangulation flux core centers. The aperium activation line, inside, outside line condition setting. Eye receptors of sonar, eye receptors of space. Process and communication line division location. Set position, direct and redirect, and signal location setting. Provision lines of cycles, triangulation lines of flux, antenna lines to high cell correlation setting. High position with all track correlation time capacitors. Directing lines of grounds, high lines of surface, travel and communication setting. All right, so the optical nerve sets core centers into binoculars. Binocular system into all settings of travel. Wires of indication setting comes into the I-line sequence of travel. Okay. Now, this is where it gets interesting, the impulse. Now, when you look at your eye, you understand the ventricle setting, which is the I-line division location setting, connects all communicates and high center location to a system, all the tractions. So, sets travels, point lines of graph, sets all calculated modified high lines of high screen adaptation setting, setting mapping sequence, mapping pi core centers, lines of travel, direct lines core centers. Then you get your floaters above the signal. Okay. That's where you see floaters when you look at the sun. These are the floaters that are coming in. So the X3000 is coming information setting into 144 grounds and 144,000 frequency and flux. Those are the floaters coming in your eye lines. Now process and lines, this location is kind of like a snake looking in on line, centers, lines, outline, rotation lines, the high center line, sig locates and setting the iris spectacle line communicates into its septors, correlates ascending to its pineal gland, the chains, the communicates lines, and height travels, how you see all levels of perspectives, core center location of travel, and location in your system, all through imaginations. Right, so that's going to happen Friday. All right, setting sequence lines of floaters has a line signals of 10 lines of measure and scale. That's 2 lines of position lines of tractions. That puts all communication lines of your cerns. The correlations of the floaters, outline signals, comes into a clock information system of 0 gravities. Process lines of 12 indicates the setting of cerns around the system, around the eye, and set lines of circuit and travel. Okay, so they communicate the ground lines, the circuits, lines of center, the seconds, minutes, and hours. The change communication lines, the eye receptors, is center course setting in line rotation surface interactions. Comes into the part acceleration. Ground lines of setting, process lines of flux in a 4-line communication system, right? Process lines indicate setting Merkabah test circuit and tetrahedron inside the eye line sequence location of panel. Process calculates high grounds, we change information setting and panels of operation setting to its earth and its space lines of track locations. Earth 1 and its position lines of space over tractions. Setting direct signals, ground lines of setting, clocking lines of high set and position of 4 lines of zeros, north, east, and west, and south. Data files, process lines of indication setting. The eye itself becomes its own file of its own indication system all through travel. Okay? So I'm just showing exactly what's going on with the eye line setting. Okay? How to go through part acceleration of time, guys, is a measure and scale, process that line set correlation setting to your dream, to your dreamer, to your dreaming. The process all indicates the system all through travel. In set lines in your simulation system all through setting. Okay? Inside tractions. Face recognition. Right? See the face, eyes, nose, mouth. There's the face. So you come in a full face of the eye line. I know it's very complicated stuff. But complicated is good because it's easy, it's formats, and then you realize, wow, if it's all in the imagination itself, and the eye, we live in the eyes and windows of the soul, then we have to understand how to use that and perceive that, and how we get in termination system, how we get in that correlation setting, how we get into that termination system, how we get into the mind of inception, how to use that through the dream itself, because that's who we are. We're looking through a dream of the dreaming that we are of dreaming. That's all it is, nothing else. This is the dream. This is the film that you're seeing through projector or projection, right? That's the dream itself, right? You're the center of the dreamer that's seen everything outside and inside the dream itself, right? But the dreaming is you just constantly existing and evolving and expanding, going wherever you want and travel. That's what it is in correlations. Because it's very hard to process if you don't understand what you're doing through your programmers. It's much easier to set yourself up in a program that you're not. See, the position of the eye line center doesn't have provision lines of high set core centers lines of travel until it understands its inner conception of its mind inception, because it's all inverted inside ourselves. Now, once you get in position of the thoughts, actions, and emotions, all right, takes you out of time, okay, of its awareness of just existing. Time, awareness, just existing. Okay? That's what it is. Takes all communication to its thoughts, its actions, and its emotions. Okay? Time, awareness of existing. That's all it is. Now, when you get out of the equations of the time, there is no time. Time equals lines of no time, which equals lines of 0. Okay, space, same thing. No, because the center operation is the no, right? Equals 0. Okay? So, ascending course centers, this is the balance of your perimeters of parameters. That's the center operation of you. You live in the nothing at grounds, in power records and timelines, in position location of your systems. 4 track line provisions into your pyramids and settings, and 4 set locations, north, east, west, and south. Process in that communication setting and travel. Your pyramids and your set tractions. Okay? So imagine that. Makes a lot more sense. So living into the nothing of operation, into the nothing of operation, into equals lines of 0 is 0. Setting travels in point lines of grounds. Now the grounds itself, okay, equals lines, setting lines of nothing, but the process line equal lines of 1. Okay. 1 is division line is setting, guys. The reason why it has to be in 1 and why position of all lines of time is space has to be 0, because the process of space and time, when you put that together, it's just creating itself, direct and redirected signals in location system interaction. Now, what you guys have to modify when you're bringing that in, what are you bringing? A teleportation vessel. Wow. The faster you go, the more you create your energy lines, and screen adaptation is flux. So that position lines of space is the center operational location system all through travel, directs the signal location to its grounds. But it's very powerful when you come into that position. But the ground itself is its earth itself. Okay, which is very, very powerful study. So that's how you see a tree, that's how you see a phone. So you don't get confused what space is, what time is, or what anything is in direct correlation, how you see anything through ground lines of surface and travel. Right? But that's your earth and rotation setting equals lines of 1. So that's 0, 0, 1. Your clogging system lines comes in all communication setting, how you see your lines of grounds, your powers and your atmospheres, modems, your Wi-Fi, your satellites and towers, in line communication, your dream, to your dreamer, to your dreaming that you are, and travel in communication setting, high lines of sequence. There's your earth lines of 1, there's your earth lines of 0, and there's your earth lines of 0 of space. Earth is space, earth of time is space, is nothing, and process in that communication setting, it travels. Earth lines of nothing in position of 1, right? So you have to understand why there has to be grounds of 1. And that grounds your system, your holographic grounds. If the earth itself was modified in line screen adaptation of 0, you guys will be processing, just creating. So if it's 0, 0, 0, that's nothing of nothing. But 0, 0, 1 is nothing of everything. That process the earth where you are in your realities, know exactly where you are in your dream, know exactly where you are as you're a dreamer, coming in all levels of dreaming through interpretations. So putting lines of dream and dreamer to dreaming is all signal in one setting. The process of communication system puts all levels of you and travel in that communications of real time in set tractions. Okay, in position of 1, in position of 0, 0. All right. That's what's integrated to grounds, powers, and atmospheres. So because if you didn't have your earth in setting lines of grounds, you wouldn't have any set lines of space and time, which means you'll be all formations of nothing and mass of nothing. You have to be in formations how to ground yourself of nothing, the process, everything that comes into something, that comes into everything, and how you modify, how you bring these things. It's not through thoughts, it's not through actions, and it's not through emotions. All right. So thoughts equals 0. Actions equals 0. Your emotions equals 1. 0, 1. So you have to understand how this all works. How it works with the indication setting, how a computer turns off and turns on. So you got 2 lines of 0, 0, 0, 1. If it's 0, 0, 0, okay, there's no indication of anything. So that means you're all levels just creating. And there's no grounds of earth of anything in travel. You're just constantly creating, and you have no grounds of your body, or what you're doing through part of acceleration of space and time. So I'm just trying to get you guys to understand these things, how to formulate that, how to simulate that, how to understand that, how to see that in all lines, the eye line division location to its remote, to its dream, to its dreamer, to its dreaming, all at the same time. Through the eye septal core center location it travels, and direct and redirect your system location systems, all levels of travel into the eye line circle location setting to the eyes itself, which is the foundation of its face recognition. Inside directions, right? So that's what it is. And once it comes to that, it comes in informations of you, alternate lines of communication settings of you, digitalized information lines of height core centers of you, and that position location measure. Your dream to your dreamer to your dreaming comes in one line, so it's face recognition. It's process lines of 3 boxes in 1, process lines of 2, process lines of 3. There it is. Boom. Dream, dreamer, dreaming, all at once. Okay? So all it's doing is just expanding. The expanding is the dreaming. Okay? The dream is interpreting what you're doing through the dreamer that you are in this center operation. So you're looking at what's going on in the 4 centers, 5 track locations. You know what's going on here, position, inside, outside line communication setting, all through intelligence, window graphs, screen graphs, communication graphs, high center graphs, and the communication circulation rotate to its intelligence. So you know exactly what's going on in provision lines of cycles and travel in set position in real time. Okay? So that's what's happening with the eye line setting. Process that indicates the system puts all lines of high circle correlation lines of travel. But getting direct lines of the earth is the ground lines of how you see your TV. You just see the TV, right? 1 times 1 equals 1, yes. But it has to be a ground lines of 1, okay? So you have to stand in that position location. So we started off at 0, 0, 0. You guys would just be creating. Just be traveling everywhere. You wouldn't know what's going on in that position. You'd just be evolving, expanding, not understanding your earth of ground lines of 1. Okay? Ground lines of 1. See, that's it. That's all it is. Ground lines of 2 and 3, your flux. Then you get in your clockings and settings of travel. Okay. Then you get our dilations of 4 signals. Process lines indicates set every 4 line signals. Seconds lines, nanoseconds, height travels, inlet communicates to setting, high travel communicates to setting, dilation to its eye. Setting lines of travel, then you indicate the system laser. Laser comes in lines of center operation sequence. The set 6 communication lines of 1 indicates and setting. They process the 4 line signals in location setting seconds, minutes, and hours. Each line has an indicates and setting that goes back in time measure, time scale, time balance. Setting lines of course centers inside the eye line center location to its receptor. Change the course center location to cyclots and correlates and setting now through travel. Boom. Done by equation. And remember, it's all intract correlations inside travel, guys. Inside the eye. Okay? Very powerful stuff. So, it's unbelievable what we're coming into now. So much more fun. Because now you understand how to get into communications. So let's get interactions. For example, get in line screen adaptations. Close your eyes, open your eyes. Doesn't matter. What matters is to try to stand position locations. All right, so this is going to open up more. Okay, more line communication. Triangulation box, triangulation box, triangulation box. So instead of sequence lines, it's just going this way and that way. I'm closing my eyes to show you exactly. It has to go in a full rotation of dilation of the sun through compass. It has a direct line and redirect location setting. So the eye itself is going to flicker back and forth until it finds its balance. Once it finds its balance, it finds location to its stream, to its streamer. What it is, the location of its track, location to its streaming. Direct lines of 3 cycles into 1 center, 1 volume, 1 track, and 1 division location of 0, 0. Set lines of space and time. In position equals lines, core centers, the earth line set location of system in 1 tractions of 0, 0, 1. Ooh-ah. Okay? So I'm just showing you exactly. When I close my eyes, guys, I open my eyes, I'm seeing the same vision. Nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. I'm not seeing different of this. I'm not seeing different of that. I'm not getting confused on this. I'm not getting confused that because I'm not connecting to my thoughts, action, emotions. That's created through a fabrication of what you're not. Now you get into out of that sequence lines of communication, you get out of too many mind frames. Get into no frame, which is all frame of 0. Bring yourself back to one number, and when it comes out of one number, there's no more shape. There's no more division. There's no more calculation setting. There's no more line calculation lines of travel. Nothing is traveling until you perceive consciousness. But in that information system, you're just looking at everything else that governs its own space of time that's on its own set position to its own operations. That's the most beautiful thing. You don't have to do anything. You're just watching everything form itself, forming into itself, forming more of levels of itself, identifying itself at a higher level, identifying what it is through new intel, identifying what it is in position, identifying what is in real time, identifying what's going on through its existing. And that's what governs its space. But what governs you is your space itself. And once you perceive consciousness, then you bring everything in. But how you bring these things in, you can now bring it in through your thoughts, action, emotions, right? Because you're creating thoughts and action, emotions. Not what you're getting provisions of, is you're releasing thoughts, action, emotions that are not you. It's the clutter you're letting go. And when you let go of that clutter, you come into the mind of conception of the dream, understand the interpretation of the dream. You become the dreamer that you are, seeing the dreams and what there are in modification setting in real time, how it's affecting you in your seconds, minutes, and hours in your body frame through clocking, guys. And it's all provision lines to the inside line set chord centers of the eye itself that sets lines of the receptor and screen adaptation of its compass, locations to its setting, to its dilations. Directing lines into the lines of the psychops. Okay, the psychology, line kind of setting, the psychological system, the psychological line can be in high center location of system, the psychosis system, line communication operation line cycle, the space op line center location of its system, the optical screen adaptation of its system, the optic line rotations to its position, the primer circuit, the primates, and high position lines of travel, direct lines and link, line can high receptors, direct correlation setting of receptors itself, setting lines of travels, indirect lines and high core centers of redirect setting location of system while through travel. Do well, right? So basically, when you're in that position, you close your eyes, right? This is already open, but this is expanding now. All right, so it's doing it all by itself. So it's like Earth is on its own setting, of its own system, of its own dilation, of its own space, of its own time, of its own dream, to its own dreamer, to its own dreaming. That process of communication is becoming more of its imagination system now. The body has to come into its navigation setting. The reason I'm getting you guys to understand these things is stop seeing myself with my eyes closed and start to see your eyes open. So in that position here, you just like that, just turn on the light switch and it will. Everything's, oh, Your oculars are on, always on in that position, right? Then you start to see everything volume, expand, open, right? So it just opened, so it's not going back, it's going further, which basically when you're in that position locations and we said and what's going on with the eye line cell location, you understand what you're doing through your dream, you understand the interpretation of the dream, the motions of the dream, the communication of the dream, the adaptation of the dream, the telepathy of the dream, the telekinesis of the dream, how to use it, intent, influence, locations, all of us united perceive location setting through mind alteration setting, which is the manipulation system all through travel in real time and set directions. Okay, so you have to understand how to see a dream, interpret what it is to you as you are a dreamer in position of processing through dreaming. That's the connections where we come into the past, present, future, which is one constellation setting. So it's one string that's connected to everyone, one singularity. And when you pull that string, everybody feels that tension inside the mind. So the avatar is in a spectacle setting, a spherical sphere that's going in the rotation line center location setting. Your eyes like this, your eyes like this, your eyes like this, your eyes like this, your eyes like that. So you never see anything of a flat surface. Friday morning, everything you're going to see is volume of dimension. Inside transience, which is the mind of inception of the eye itself. The eye itself is the volume of its imagination of itself and set position lines of travel. So directing signal here, directing signal here, and directing signal here. That's what's going to happen, right? This is the center core of the dreamer. This is the set position location of the dream. And this is the conceptual setting of expanding. Okay? Dream within the dreamer. Okay? In set position to its dreaming, right? To expanding its setting. To exploring its setting. To evolving its system. Okay? At just all levels of travel. That's all it is. It's a constant, continuous flow that you understand. Wow, I understand my dream. I understand my dream because I am the dreamer. I'm in control of my dream, which means I'm the control of my dreamer of the dream. That's in remote, that's in review, or that's in lines of screen adaptations, or I'm understanding myself as I'm going through that process through dreaming. So when you get into that position, it's much easier for you guys to how to identify yourself, how you see yourself as 001, or how you see yourself through 01110, or how you see yourself in 01 triangulation lines of flux, or how you see yourself and visualize your own formulate your own equations of creating, not through creation. Creation is 01, and that stays on setting. 01 equals Earth 1. Okay? That's one set location that never leaves your foundations, right? You need that, because without that, you'd be just in space and time just creating. And your body wouldn't understand where it is in navigation of its ground itself, right? So it won't understand the dream, it won't understand the dreamer, and it won't understand the interpretation of dreaming. That's how it gets all confused. It doesn't know where it's going. It doesn't know where the body has already been. And that's where you get confused in your mind. Especially when the mind itself, imagination of itself, the dream interpretation of itself, the dreamer of itself, and the location of its dreaming of itself is now coming back in its imagination of itself. Now that's an interpretation on its own of mind and conception that puts everything in the mind itself, right? Mind of inception. Live in the dream, okay? Knowing the dream. I am the dream. I'm coming into the dream that I am through the dreamer and how to control that through the dreaming. So there's so many ways of looking at that. And knowing how to see yourself, and everything around you modifies how you see yourself through avatar. So if you're in 001, you're in position of space, you're in position of time. So that's creating, okay, directing and redirecting at the same time, measure and scale. That's creating, right? But the position that keeps you grounded to your earth, okay, is 01. You're seeing a TV, you're seeing a computer, you're seeing your phone, you're seeing your car. So you don't get confused that you're just creating, but you need an earth to keep yourself created, which is the grounds of the mind. So you don't get lost in transition, or anything you see in vision, right? But your creation of creating is all settings how you see yourself as the dream to the dreamer that you are, interpretation how you see it through dreaming. That's one signal, one center, one track to one division. So you start to see the interdimensionals of space and everything around you through mass through volume. Okay? Now when you open up to that, you start to see everything around you in a clocking system. Now the body comes in its own navigation setting. So for example, set position lines of attraction, center locations, all right? Setting sequence, okay? All right, so that's the bed, right? Okay, so you're on the bed. Yeah, you're lying on the bed. Okay, you're on the bed, right? Now, the bed takes over. Sets position in the metabed. Okay? Now, in that track center, this gets really interesting in travel, guys. In set track locations, right? It's a cryo cube. Okay, it's a pod. You're sitting on a pod, you're just lying down on a pod. Now, what you understand, the navigation has the ground lines of settings, process communication setting, open lines of sequence. Process lines of indication into the center operation that sets the solar plex and set position of balance. Sets travels point lines of graph, center course center, line circle locates the system, opens all signal locations setting, on communication setting to travel, and then communication lines of graphs. So sets calculate and modify, and that position locates high centers. You have targets in sequence, lines of travels, and direct lines of line. Okay? So it's very powerful how the actual bed shows the body how to navigate its system, gives instructions. So basically, sending lines of indication setting, the body's here on stomach, slowing down space, okay? Setting track core as centers, flipped over, lines on its back, and set lines of communication settings, sets all communications high center location to a system, okay? Speeding up space and time, okay? Directing on you turn left, you turn right, your coordinates are going this way, and your coordinates are going this way. So the body's trying to find its navigations, right? So the position of the bed itself is giving the body how to navigate its system by itself, right? So you have no control what you're doing. You have no control when you're sitting in a chair. The chair itself is showing you how to coordinate your own system. It's giving you instructions and know exactly what you're reminding yourself was in that position of who you really are. You are the dream that you're interpreting through the dreamer that you are in real time. To identify that is through dreaming. And once you come into that, you take the past, the present, and future that modifies your system of real time. Okay? That puts everything in location of all timelines all at once, seeing everything all at once in seconds, minutes, and hours. And that tractions, right? So you have to get in that modification setting to travel because this and this is coming to expansion now. It's coming out. It's going inside now. We're going into the mind inception inside. So the mind imagination is taking over the core. Now the provisions of the thoughts and the actions and emotions, if you keep adding frames and travel in that communication setting, you're creating the thoughts, action, emotions in its own system of its own entity force. If it comes in its own setting, it becomes its own sentient. If it becomes its own sentient, it becomes its own symbiote. If it becomes its own symbiote, it becomes its own symbiosis. And symbiosis. Now, symbiosis is an oasis. That's where it comes into Toth. That's where it comes to Hages, Corbies, and Hermes. That's where it comes into mirror resolution, line connections, or reflection. Directing ground lines and Mandela effect, and butterfly effect, high force lines of communication setting, reverse lines of angles, triangle line communication setting, force record of time center, line communication, high center location of interference. So the thoughts, the actions, and emotions will take over your system through imaginations. Okay? So you have no more control of your body line. But that's why it's so important to understand everything around you is giving you consciousness to give you understand that when you're picking these things up or everything you're touching, the position, location, setting is taking over your body through that navigation. It's balancing your system and it's trying to understand where you're in that position though, because it sees you in confusion. You're supposed to be in the balance of everything you see because you brought it in through attractions. But you did it through the dream and you did it through the dreamer that you are through the provisions of just dreaming all at once. One center, one traction, one division, one locations. That's 4 lines of ones and 4 set lines of communication setting, 3 lines of zeros, set position of 0, 1 attractions. So 3 lines of zeros is past, present, future, right? Which is nothing. That's the formations of anything, but there is no formations of letter, number, shapes, and symbols because it doesn't exist through thoughts, action, emotions. Now, once you get in provision, then you understand where you are in identifications. Living, existing of the nothing, which is massive everything. Okay? That's it through attraction. All right, so directing signals. Processing that lines of position of coding. Verification coding, notifications of coding, 4 lines of track centers. So your body's going this way, this way, this way, and this way now. Okay? So when you get on the bed itself is navigating you. Okay, it's navigating the body. You have no more control. It's navigating when you sit down. It's navigating when you're driving a car. It's navigating you. So, all through panels, all through circuits, all through screen. So what you guys have to modify is understanding how to get in space modulation setting of control of the body that you're in and travel, and know exactly you're in control of the dream, you're in control of the dreamer that you are, and you're in control of the interpretation how you see it through dreaming. Because it's existence of 3 times equals lines of 0. 3x lines equals 0. 3 into nothing. 0 of nothing, nothing of 0. So once you understand that formation setting, you become into the mind of empty space of who you are in provision. And then you start to understand how to use that in psychonism, location setting to your chart correlation setting in position. Once you get into that, you understand how to use that through your 12 and tract centers. And once you understand how to use that, you see that through the receptors. But the one thing that doesn't change is what you see through the dream itself. But you have to understand you are the dreamer to the dreaming. And when you get into the seconds, minutes, and hours, it changes everything in clockings. So a clocking centers, let's get at 4 lines of sequence, 4 lines of panels of travel. Okay, so we got 54 lines of course centers, Wi-Fi division lines of sonar, process lines of indication setting, 3 lines of signals, 4 lines of setting, 4 line position. Compass over screen, directing lines of grounds, sets course centers, direct lines of communication, 2 moons in 2 directions. Process line, yin and yang, process line signals, and 2 lines of rotation, service, and traction. Okay? So we know exactly how to go through the infinity 8-line rotations where the moon sets its setting. It comes in time zone, no time zone, time 0, time setting, travel, and communications. And remember, it's all through the eye-line center. It's all through the eye-line center, all through tractions, how it sees, right? So it sees on provision of the grounds, set position location here, set position here, set positions here, all through traction, all right? So it's basically understanding how you get into that. How do I bring everything back to 0? Well, it's affirmation that you all live in the nothing, right? The know-nothing game, which is all massive nothing itself. So if you get in the process of NO, you're in the network of operation. And if you get in position lines of NO, question equals O, okay? You get into the nothing of its operation or networks of its nothing, which is the question of you, which is your quantum you, equals 0. So you're in the 0 of nothing. That grounds everything. Now, when you understand the grounds of nothing, but you have the process of the grounds of everything, that's 0, 1. Process line, Earth 1. Okay, you have Earth 1, but you have 12 lines of Earth. These are point lines of tracks of transitions, how you see it through the equal line center location of your system, all through plateau. Processes and cues and setting the travel. Then you go through the platforms and setting lines of travel, in position, outlines of Earth line 1, process lines of Earth lines of space, which is 0, and timelines of 0. Process in that position equal lines of 0. But you have to add question in there because that's you through question lines, puts all levels of you, how you see yourself through DDD. Dreamer, dreamer, dream, dreamer, and dreaming. Now that was line screen adaptation. So when I cross line signals in the box frame, then you come to your alphabetical setting. So DX, okay. What's DX? Remember, we've gone through that, right? DX. So DX is lines of time equals lines of question, okay? So the lines of set location, I'm added in the dream line center, process the outline box line, frame lines of 4 zeros and travels, and set position of 1 center and 1 set traction. So sets lines, communication lines of 2 panels of operation screen. Process lines of indication lines, high center location, triangulation 1, triangulation 2, triangulation 4, and set lines of communication. Platforms of setting, overline sequence, process lines, communication high center. Now in that communication line, the DX, okay, is the dream, which is time sequence. So we have DX lines of 1 equals lines of question. Always have to add question there because you're adding your quantum self. You don't add the question there. The D connection setting is not boxed in frame. You have boxed in frame, you're good to go. You're in observation. But taking that out of the direct setting location of its division location that's mentioned, takes lines communication to its dream, to its dreamer, to its dreaming, its track location. So the dreaming itself, guys, is knowing exactly how did that lines of 3 lines of signals times lines of set lines of 0, sets position of 1 equals lines of position of 0, 0, sets position of 0, 0, set position of 0, 0, 0, 0, sets position of 0, 0, 0, 0, sets communication lines of 2, set lines of 2 over 3, 3 lines of 4, and 4 lines of 6, and 8 lines of 12. So it's calculated and modify how you go on 0 lines of 1 and set position lines of travel, how you correlate the setting to 12 lines of measure and scale, inhibitors over screen, adaptation lines of flux over the highways and traffic communications. So the process lines of zeros and ones and traffic inventories, it gets a lot more complicated now because you're going through a box frame into a triangulation frame, okay, into a sonograph screen, adaptation to a Schumann resonance, or anything through an alpha line center, delta communication, a theta communication high center, 0 lines of gravity, set position 1, travel 0, set triangulation, all lines, high position of Fibonacci. So there's a lot of things you can do, which is then how to see yourself. 0, okay, 0 equals 0 equals 1, okay? 0, okay, equals triangulation equals 0, Okay, so that's process of communication. So in that set lines, space and time is here, space and time is here, right? So you got space, time, of flux, 3 lines of signals, past, present, and future. Set location of flux, past lines of time, lines of set location of future. Directing ground lines of signals. You can do anything in modification study because you all live in the mass of nothing, which is the mass of everything. You can't live in the nothing game of no nothing because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because the mind imagination is all of the nothing itself. So there is no form, there is no shape. That's just imagination itself. So it doesn't equalize anything in an equation until you modify the location of coding. Once you codify things, then you bring it into its imagination system through its core. Then you bring in its position location, how you see it through your pyramid and track communications. There's your pyramid. Then you get into the hieroglyphics in travel communications. Then you get into the ground lines of highest standard core centers lines of travel. Then you get in position location, how you see it through all lines of position of flux in time capacitor. Then you get information lines of high centers in travel in that communication setting and line position locations of 3 pyramids in 1. Setting ground lines of settings, process line indicates system of 2 panels of ceiling. Directing ground centers of flux and position of ground lines of surface and tractions. Getting communication lines of location grid in set travel communications. Setting core lines of travels, outline signals, outline division, outline location, and setting. Ooh-ah. And then you work with inside and outside rotation of the system, all through setting, all through operation and travel. Okay? And so there's a lot of things that you see, but you have to understand how to see it in lines of communication, see your truth and false narratives. If I get the truth line of triangulation equals lines of 0, equals lines of 1, equals lines of 3, mass lines of positions, all levels, mind line conceptual settings, 3 lines of setting, 3 graphs, communication lines of 1/3, setting travels into position of 1/4, set position lines of 2 measure, into 24 clock in scale, and set position lines of travel. So remember, there's nothing you can't do with the mind, but you have to see yourself and travel what you are, of the dream itself, and the dream and center of itself, of its creating of itself, its dreaming. That's all it is. Oh, look at that. The line took out because you can notice that frequencies. So that is the dreaming. Okay? That's the dreaming. Okay? The dream itself is the center box. Okay? The dream is the center box. Okay? The dreaming is expanding out, but you put them all together. 3 into 1 equals 0. And 0 equals nothing. And when nothing comes in information, it's all levels in how you perceive. Everything is conscious, where you're now just in the mind of empty space. You stay in the mind of empty space. That's how you perceive everything that its own governance, its own system. You're starting to see everything through its own operation that basically puts everything in the location of mind over matter. It's moving itself. It's identifying itself. It's expanding itself. I want you guys to truly understand that, how it works, the location of its dream. And the dreamer is in the center operation. That's you and the dreamer, right? So you're navigating your dream to your dreamer to your dreaming in 3 cycles. You're expanding yourself. You're evolving in yourself. You're expanding, exploring in all lines of communications. That's all you're doing through the dream of dreamer that you are, interpreting what you're doing through a dream. So you don't get confused of where you are in your realities of a clocking system, locations. How you see yourself is how you see yourself and who you are through your images. But processing the dream is processing you are the dreamer of the dreaming. That's 3 cycles in 1. The constellations to Orion's belt. And how to see that information, lines of center location setting, you simulate that, you coordinate that, you understand how to use that to your provision in real time. This helps you and guide you and understand, oh my gosh, this makes a lot more sense. So if I'm the dream to I'm the dreamer that's making up the dream, then I'm understanding what I'm doing through interpretation of dreaming. That's 1 cycles of 3 centers all in once. That's 3 cycles. So we're all connected to the dream itself. It's connected to the dreamer itself. It's connected to the dreaming of all set lines in 3 tethers in 1, 3 attachments in 1, 3 volumes in 1. We're coming to the mass now. So when you see a triangulation, you don't see it like this anymore. Okay? You see it like this. And then you start to see it like this inside. Okay? I mean, it's just basically understanding how to see it more lines of what it really is in its adaptation system, or what it is, and try to correlate to its foundation of its dream, to its dreamer of itself, of its interpretation of dreaming, its formations of its grounds, its powers and its adversaries. So that's what you see at triangulation. That is going beyond. That's seeing beyond measure and scale, guys. Seeing beyond measure and scale. Okay? Seen beyond measure and scale. Okay? That's what it is. Okay? Dream, okay? Within a dreamer to a dream mean. Now, when you get in position of dream within a dream within a dream, your reality is shifting all timelines, which the body is not in conception, is an understanding. It's consciousness is going from a dream to another dream, to a dreamer to a dreaming. So it's a dream to wake up to a dream to a dream. So every time you're waking up, it's a dream. Waking up, it's a dream. Waking up, it's a dream. But does the dreamer identify what is doing through its dream? Is to identify what you're doing is dreaming at the same time. So once we get in that provision, we get a lot more understanding how to use that through imagination since we are. And we use that through the body of navigations. And everything around us is given as consciousness. How to sit down in a chair, how to sit on a bed. Okay? Because if the bed is taking over the body, you have to understand what's going on through navigation. It's navigating your body to travel. Same with when you're sitting in a chair or anything you pick up, your senses and your sensories. It's for you to bounce that out and set position lines of travel. Okay? That's all it is in equations. All right? So the more you come into that, then you're saying you're the dreamer. To the dreaming, it doesn't matter. It can be in any order. I am the dreamer. I'm the process of the dream. I understand the interpretation of dreaming. So I'm in the dream of the dreamer to the dreaming all at once. 3 cycles equals lines of 0. Set lines equals lines of 0. 0 equals 3. 3 equals 0. Right? 0 equals lines of 1, 1, 1, 1. Set position line high, centers lines of travel. So that's 4 lines of signals. Same lines, all communication setting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 flux of screen. Graph communications high struct correlation setting to travel. Okay, so that indicates lines. If it's 0, if it's on one ground center, it's 0, 1, 0, 2, and 0, 3, and 0, 4 of 0, 1. So 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, and set position of 0, 1. So 5 0 1s and set position lines of 0 track correlation setting. Earth platform and set grounds and set tractions. Okay. So now we understand how we get in position of 0, 1 now. How you do it through triangulation. The team has to understand how to go through the zeros and ones of platforms. Okay, how to get in that order. Know exactly how to get in that position of traffic and inventory to a system through 0 and 1. Because all you're doing is you're modifying the earth line and traffic communication of travels. That's all you're doing in set position through the dreaming. Everything in the center operation is the dream and set tractions, right? The dreamer is the center core of the system itself. Okay, that's the dreamer. That's controlling the dream. That's controlling the dreaming. All through sending, all through communication. Okay? All right, so that should help you out in the visual location with cycles. All right? Questions and answers on Q&A. Adios.